No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, I want to talk about Gen Z.
Okay. All right. Let's do it.
I was watching The Dark Knight and the scene where Christian Bale's talking with Michael Caine, and Michael Caine's giving the analogy about the person who was robbing all of the jewels, and they tried to bargain with them, and he said that some people just want to watch the world burn. That's kind of like an iconic line about why the Joker in the movie was doing what he was doing. It wasn't because he was trying to get money or power or whatever. He just wanted to watch the world burn. And what it made me think of is this kind of divergence that I'm seeing in the workforce when it comes to what is motivating people. And that's where Gen Z comes in. Now, I'm not saying Gen Z wants to watch the world burn, but they are absolutely motivated differently than a lot of leaders think or are used to motivating people. And it's one of those things where if you're trying to bargain or reason with someone who has no desire to be bargained or reasoned with, and they just want to watch the world burn, you're essentially speaking the wrong language to that person. And you have to, have a different approach if you want to be able to, meet them on their level. And so I bring this up because Gen Z is the first generation that I have had to kind of actually read and learn about in order to understand better. I was born right on the border between Gen X and Millennial, and I feel like I have a lot of the traits of both of those generations. It's never been hard for me to relate to either one, but with Gen Z, even though I might act like Gen Z in certain things sometimes, it's not an inherent knee jerk for me. It's not something that that it's a go-to for me. So I had to learn about it. What are your thoughts on this? Because you lead people from a lot of different generations. Are you seeing differences in how Gen Z is motivated versus millennials and Gen Xers and older people?
I think similarly to growing up and the difference between my generation and my grandparents and the introduction of technology and personal computers and access and the very beginnings of the internet and things like that. And I think that we're down this path now, to your point, where we're seeing some larger kind of shifts and some different approaches to not only work, but actually life. And we talk a lot about on the podcast and other places, that ability to find joy in what you do, to find joy in life, to have control of the things that you want to be able to do. And we see a lot more of that in this generation where people are this is what I like to do, so I'm going to build my life around what I like to do. And I'm not going to fall into the trap of doing things I don't like, so that I can then find the minimal amount of time to do the things that I do like. And so I think that, to your point, understanding, reading about, having dialogue and conversations about how does that show up at work, and how does that influence the way in which you communicate with people, the way in which you support people, the way in which you motivate people, and all the things that may have worked over time, or all the assumptions of things that you think that are going to work in leadership. To your point earlier, it's like two different languages. If you're not attuned to and having conversations and dialogue with the different generations, understanding their approach, understanding what motivates them, understanding what they want, and understanding, their need or their request for not just maybe how can I enjoy this job or how can I get better at this job, but how does this actually tie to the life that I want to live? And that's a very different thing than before, which was, you better be good at your job. You better want to get better, because whatever that life is that you want to live, it's going to take income and money and all these other things that you need to have, where now I think you've got people in a generation where they're like, well, I don't need a whole lot of money or income or this or that to live exactly what I want to live. I can actually figure that out in a lot of different ways. So I now get to choose how I want to do that work and where I want to do that work. And that's just a very different thing from a leadership standpoint that I think a lot of leaders are used to, including myself. So things that I've had to learn and figure out and work through and better understand in today's current workforce.
I know that competition has been is a large part of who I am. Not in that I'm an incredibly competitive person, but that I have looked at coworkers as my competition for promotions in the past. I've looked at the people I work alongside as, ooh, okay, I know where I want to go next. It looks like this person wants to go there also. Let's see what I can do to distinguish myself away from this person. Let's see what I can do to show how I can shine so that I am the one looked at for this position instead of somebody else. Now, that can go horribly awry when people figure out how to throw somebody else under the bus. That's never a good thing. But if you're using it to say, how can I set myself apart? I've always looked at that as largely a good thing. I think the Gen Z, one of the things that they are inherently differ them from older generations is that they don't necessarily look at the person working alongside them as their competition for a promotion. They look at like, how can I make sure that I'm increasing the number of hours a week that I work as doing something that I'm passionate about or that speaks to my sense of purpose. And if the promotion that you're talking about as being like the next step up means I'm doing less of that work, I don't even want the promotion to begin with, let alone do I want to look at the person next to me as my competition. So I look at you think about people who are really good at what they do, whatever it is. They love what they're doing. They're not in a leadership role. They're in like just a doer role, and they love what they're doing. And then they get promoted because somebody said, "Wow, you're the best widget maker. So now you're going to lead a team of widget makers." And we've talked in the past many times about how that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the best leader of widget makers, because leadership is a different skill set than making widgets. Mm-hmm. So you might be promoting the wrong person to begin with, but if the person is taking the promotion because they inherently think, oh, I need this promotion for the next step in my career. I need to be able to validate my own existence by saying I'm moving up. I'm taking on more responsibility. I'm getting bigger roles, more money that will allow me to buy a bigger house or a more expensive car, whatever all those things are that a lot of previous generations fell into this trap. I think Gen Zs are less likely to fall into that trap to begin with. They're less likely to say they want a promotion if it means instead of doing what they love doing, they're leading people and watching the people do the thing that they now miss having a part of their life. They kind of have an ability to look at what that future looks like to them and how much of their work is going to be something that is passion driven, is purpose driven, and if it doesn't put them one step closer to that kind of euphoria state, which is I'm doing every hour of my day that I'm awake is spent doing something I'm passionate about and that speaks to my sense of purpose. If it's not getting me closer to that, it's not something that you can hold over my head as a carrot. It's not something you can say, hey, you got to be striving for this. There is no means to an end. There is no, well, I'm going to do this job for 2 years that I hate because I think it's a stepping stone to something more. It's like, no, that's not going to work for me. I don't want to do something for 2 years that I hate because it might be a stepping stone to something else. I want to do what I love all the time. And if I'm getting further away from that, that's not something that I'm ever going to even try for.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. Because you made me think of a lot of things. Like we think about like competitive spirit or intrinsic motivation or perseverance and grit and things like that. And as I've said before, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, we say things like perseverance and grit and how they're very important, I think, in life in providing you with perspective or experience that allows you to prove to yourself of what you're capable of. But when you're going through perseverance and grit, it sucks. It's no fun. Like it's not enjoyable. Like you're dealing with something that that you weren't expecting necessarily to deal with, or to your point earlier, like you're taking on an expectation or a role or responsibility that you know is not going to be great, but you're doing it for a longer term type of goal. So I think with some of that right now, like I think about how might that play out longer term if those are the types of the decisions that are being made right now. Like if people are less willing to do some things that are hard or that they really don't want to do over time, what does that look like, in life in general or the workforce? But also the competition thing that you brought up, I'd love to get your perspective. And again, like I don't think that we're going to be able to solve for why this is the thing right now, but an element of competition, like why do you feel maybe that is different now? Because I heard you say that and it makes sense to me, and I've kind of seen that as well, as like there's less of that. Let me raise the bar for myself because I want to outperform that other person. There's now more of the let me raise the bar for myself because I want to raise it for myself. And so like those the maybe the ways of doing things where you're like doing the comparison competition elements, for some people it just kind of lands flat and they're not interested. But if you take the time to help them connect why getting better for themselves is going to help them with what they want to do, there seems to be a little bit more stickiness. But why do you think the competition thing is maybe reducing or not as prevalent as it used to be?
I think it has to do with the number of examples that these people can see where starting a journey, saying, I'm just going to do this temporarily. I know it's not fun. I know that it doesn't speak to what I want to do, but as a stepping stone to something else, how quickly and how easily it leads to a life spent like that, and how that is not anything to be proud of, or to, that leads to saying, what am I proud of? Well, it's not the work that I did. I'm proud of the things and stuff that I've accrued. And if you don't care about things and stuff, if you don't care about accruing, things, if you think the things that you own end up owning you, then you are less likely to be driven by getting those things. And so I'll give you a great example. If you are in your 30s or over right now, then you're old enough to remember the gymnast, the U.S. Olympic women's gymnast who did the vault, and she had a broken ankle. And she did it anyway and landed on one foot, and she was like cheered. She got the team gold medal and was cheered for doing that. And then look at the last Olympics. You have Simone Biles, who decided that the best thing to do was to step away and not continue forward because of her own mental health, and how we are celebrating that. We celebrated both of those things in the moments that they happened. And I believe that if they were switched, we would have not celebrated either. Meaning today, a person who decided that, I have a broken ankle, but I'm going to continue to do this anyway, knowing that it might permanently injure myself. What could possibly be worth putting yourself through that today? And that person will be looked at today as like having the wrong set of priorities. And then vice versa. If 25 years ago when that happened, if it had been a gymnast saying, you know what, I'm going to take a step back for my own mental health, I'd be like, are you kidding me? You're part of a team. Get your butt back out there, right? Mm-hmm. So the conversation has changed over what we look at as valuable. Do we value how we, figuratively kill ourselves in order to get something? Or do we value, how do we acknowledge that we have humanity and we take care of ourselves in order to move forward? And that's a very different switch in mindset. And I think it is inherent in this group of people. I think it's something that is not something they had to learn. And I think people who have grown up the other way have to kind of learn that. I don't inherently see one as being like fully better than the other, like anything. I think it's a balance. I think there are times, and this is the Gen Xer in me speaking up. There are times when I feel like I have to do things as a means to an end or to get through things, but I won't do it for years. But then how long would I do it for, right? Like, what is the line? I can't define it. I kind of know when I feel it. I know whether it's worth doing or not, or if I've been doing it too long and I try to step back from it. But just like why they won't go into it to begin with, that can get away from me. If I start doing something that I don't like, thinking, okay, this is a means to an end, I could look back on it after 2 or 3 years and think, wait a minute, how did I get here? Like, how did I let myself do this for this long? And I think Gen Z is less likely to even start down that path. So it's just an ability to kind of like know what you're capable of doing and to know what you're not capable of doing. And to kind of move forward in spirit of what's best for you long term.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
The 1 minute hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 minute hack, here's what I want you to do. I want you to read a couple of articles on Gen Z. There's a lot about it on LinkedIn right now. LinkedIn is launching a new kind of Gen Z Voices segment on their platform, and you can find a lot of good information there. But read up about it, because if there's one thing that you shouldn't do, it is paint an entire generation with a broad brush. You should be talking to each person who reports up to you individually, and if there's one thing that is kind of an inherent expectation of a lot of people who are basically between the ages of 18 and 25, 27 at the highest, is that they don't want to be treated the same way as everybody else on it. They don't want you to lead them like you're leading a team. They want you to lead them like they're leading them as an individual. And so whatever you can do to make sure that how you meet them where they are and how you lead them is almost custom made for them and their situation, you're more likely to be able to lead them effectively, and you're more likely to be able to help them attain the goals they want to attain, which means they're more likely to be productive and high performing for you in the meantime. You can't approach this with the same carrot and stick mentality that maybe you have with other employees you've led throughout the years.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a great 1 minute hack, and again, it's important as leaders that we are really kind of continuing to research, understand, and learn about those that we lead, but at the same time, not make the assumptions or paint with the broad brush of believing that just because somebody is from a certain generation that this is how they are, what they believe, or how they do things. And so, but having the knowledge and the ability to adjust our leadership for that person in front of us, I think is going to continue to be more and more important over time as we look at the uniqueness of individuals and, approach the work in such a way that we can have a common goal of what we're looking to achieve, but doing such in an individualized way.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think also this is the first time in maybe ever where if you're a leader of people, you might be leading people who are of 4 or 5 different generations all at the same time. And when you have 2 generations that are right next to each other, there's some differences, but there's enough similarities where it is probably a little easier if either you can or you can't. Either you're a good leader for this group or you're not. It's really difficult for any person to be able to empathize and relate to and be able to walk a mile in the shoes of 4 different generations of people, because the further away from the one that you're a part of yourself, the more you have to actually really take steps to learn about it and really take steps to you can't just empathize by saying, oh, I empathize with you because I'm saying it. You have to actually learn about it and be able to meet people where they are. And if you're leading teams of people that are made up of all these different generations, there is no way that they are all motivated the same way. They're in different stages of life and they want different things. But everybody wants dignity and everybody wants to be treated with respect. If you can start there and talk to each person individually, I think you're gonna do okay.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.